Hi everybody and welcome to the Museum of Northern Arizona. It's Friday, it's 2:30, and that means it's time for Family Friday. So to go along with our flower program today, the first thing I want you to do is close your eyes and picture some flowers. Are you picturing maybe a rose? Are you picturing a sunflower? Or maybe some very colorful petals on a flower? Get that picture and think about that, and then open up your eyes. And did you think about some roses, maybe some sunflowers? What kind of beautiful petals did they have? Because all of those things we're going to learn about today. You're going to hear a lot of different scientific words. And our botanist, which happens to be a vocabulary word, our botanist is going to do a really great job, I think, of explaining all of these big scientific words. But there are a couple words that I would like you to be putting your listening ears on. Our first one, like I gave you a hint, I told you this was one. Botanist. Botanist is an expert in the scientific study of plants. And you're going to meet a botanist today. Our next word, which is a really good one, is seed. Now, you may have seen seeds, you may have even eaten seeds, but do you really know the definition of seed? A seed is the small, hard part of a plant from which a new plant grows. Stems is the main body part, plant or shrub. To learn today what a shrub is. Our last word is petals. Petals is even a fun word to say. Petals are the body part of a flower that surrounds the productive part of the flower. So we happen to have a really good example of a petal, and you're going to find out more about this today. There is the yellow part, that's the petals, and it's all around the reproductive part of the flower. So the pollen part, the part where the nectar, the flower juice, all of that is the reproductive part, and the petals surround that. So we're here in this beautiful field, and I have a friend next to me here. Her name is Jan. She is the expert botanist here at the museum and is a scientist here. And we also have been joking that she's the queen of these flowers here too. And she's going to really help us learn all about flowers today. Thank you for being here, Jan. Where are we at? What is going on here?
Hi, Mary, you are right. These are our iconic Flagstaff North American native sunflowers. It's a great place to start about learning about flowers with sunflowers simply because they're big and you can look at them and you can see all of their parts. So they're very easy. What you can see here is that a sunflower is in the aster tribe, and a tribe is just a grouping of plants that are similar, just like our tribes here are people that have similar genetics and similar backgrounds and maybe similar culture. But what you have on the sunflower is it's interesting because a sunflower, as we look at it, is really a collection of flowers. And so each of the parts of this that we call a petal is actually called a ray flower. It goes out. And each of the little structures in the middle that look like little men standing up, each one of those is a little flower, and each one of those is called a disc flower. And so flowers can be very, very complex things. But the thing about flowers that's real obvious to all of us is that, flowers have maybe two purposes. Well, their first purpose, I think, is beauty. And we tend to think of beauty as superficial, and they certainly are superficially beauty. They draw in our eye gorgeous colors, but they're made to attract us and to attract all of the creatures who depend on them for life. So their beauty is one of their purposes, and then they use their beauty, which goes beyond just the color and the form and the loveliness, to bring in pollinators, because the purpose of the beauty of flowers is to produce more flowers. So when you have a flower, you have a fruit and a seed, and so the sunflowers, that way, when they get pollinated, can make their own more flowers each year, and you can see a single sunflower might time lead to a field of sunflowers like this. So flowers are all about life and beauty. Bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, all kinds of animals love the flowers now. And then when they dry up and they're not as superficially beautiful later on and they have their seeds, their whole other layer of beauty is that they just feed all of these creatures. Different birds come and eat the seeds. Little small animals can eat them. So they sustain life all along the spectrum. So beauty of flowers is just something that is huge. And so when you walk around and look at flowers, enjoy them and just see how they make you feel, and then see how they support all the other creatures living around you. So we looked at this beautiful sunflower, and you can see it's colorful, it's large, it's showy. It's here to attract pollinators because they need to spread the pollen around to make seeds. But there are other plants too that have flowers that we might not think about as flowering. And so grasses look a lot like they don't have flowers as we think of them, but actually right now as I'm holding this stem, it's called an inflorescence, and an inflorescence just holds a bunch of grass flowers, and then the flowers are actually here. So these flowers don't have petals. They have very small parts that are pretty inconspicuous, and they're not designed to attract pollinators. So you don't really see a lot of color here. But what you do see is that when these grasses have their pollen, they just shed it in the wind. And since they're wind pollinated and the pollen will go from plant to plant to pollinate, they don't need to have these showy flowers with large petals, because the wind is the pollinator of this plant, and the wind doesn't really care what the flowers look like. It just blows the pollen. And so wind pollinated plants don't have to have beautiful, colorful flowers, although they do have a beauty of their own in the form of this eyelash grass. You can see this is called blue grama, Grama, not like your grandma, only one M. But you can see that people will call it eyelash glass or spectacle grass, just because of the lovely eyelash fringe look of the one-sided flowering structures of this plant.
And this is a native grass,
yes,
right?
This is a native grass here in Colorado Plateau, and also native over a wide range of the West.
We're at another plant.
Right. Well, so I really wanted to stop and show everyone this plant, because when you're out walking, you'll see this plant, and it's a very wild plant. This is a wonderful plant called gum plant, and it's native here. It's called gum because if you look at some of the flowers, as the buds open, they have white rubbery sap coming out of the top. And so this plant has an interesting history. During World War II, when the United States was running out of rubber because supplies were cut, scientists began to investigate gum plants because they found out that the white gum on the flowers can be used as a rubber substitute. And there are tales too of it being used as a chewing gum among people who knew. But it's really fun. When my children were babies, you can try this with your family, with your pets, or your children.
Wow.
The gum.
It was sticky. It feels
right.
sticky.
It's sticky. It has white sap coming out. And so you can decorate yourself or your pets, your baby stroller, your hair, your house, anything you want you can do with these gum flowers. So they're really fun to play with. You can see that the flowers are pretty and colorful, but they don't have what we call petals, those ray flowers. So they're rayless, and they have each flower in the center is a little disc flower. So once again, when you look at the center of one of these flowers, you have many, 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 many tiny tubular flowers in the middle. So flowers look simple, and they are very complicated sometimes. And then you can also look at the base of the flower and see all of the different little curly These little leafy appendages that come out and hold the flower that is made up of all of the many, many flowers. And the thing about this plant too, other than it's beautiful, it's got the yellow color, it's kind of scruffy looking.
Yeah.
The other dimensions of its beauty are like you can have fun like it. As we said, this one is very, very attractive to pollinators, including it's a nectar plant for monarch butterflies, the mature butterflies. And it's got an interesting fragrance, and I think fragrance is another thing, another dimension of beauty. And as you walk around with all of these flowers, smell them. Sometimes the flowers themselves have fragrance to draw in pollinators. This plant actually, I think, has a lot of fragrance. It's kind of sticky and resinous throughout. Oh my God, I love the flowers.
Kind of smells a little like vanilla to me.
You want to be careful. You want to know a plant is not poisonous before you start rubbing your hands on it. Even touching it, you should know that first. So kind of make sure you know what you're looking at. But that's another fun thing to do, is to use your senses. And people who work with plants, even botanists today, will frequently use odor as one of the identifying characteristics of a plant, which we don't think about. We think about more visual because that's our big sense, but people will smell plants, and that's sometimes even in plant keys, you'll come to a place that says certain odor, because one plant in the family will have a strong smell and one plant won't, and it'll be the deciding thing to tell them apart. So one of the things that can be really fun with flowers is that flowers that are in the same family, and in this case the same tribe, can look very much alike. So just like we're kind of the family of human beings, flowers here are in the family of sunflowers here, or the sunflower tribe. They're in the aster family, which includes all plants that have this form of the ray flowers on the outside and the disc flowers in the middle. And so this is our big annual North American sunflower we talked about, a great big plant. Well, there's a niche too here for little sunflowers. And so this is showy goldeneye. And this, you can see, is mirrors in form the bigger sunflower, but it's a distinct plant. It's very small in stature, but once again, you've got the ray flowers or petals, the disc flowers in the middle. You've got the little leafy base at the back that holds the whole thing together like an envelope to keep all of the flowers together. And this plant is very similar. One of the reasons it's in the same tribe is that many flowers will look like daisies, but this sunflower tribe has seeds that are hard and encased in a solid shell. And of course, you all know sunflower seeds. The big sunflower will have large seeds, probably not as big as the ones you get at the store, but they are still substantially large. And if you crack them open, they have a delicious nut, just like the ones you get at the store. And the little ones will have those same seeds, only you can tell that they're not going to make great big seeds from a flower like that. They're going to make really tiny seeds. But if you were to use your magnifying glass and get the seeds from both of them and put them together, they would have the same shape. And inside, inside their case, they would have a really delicious nut meat in there, and that is the seed of this plant.
Wow, I did not know that. So when you walk by these flowers, you'll be able to know that. So what is this, Jan?
Okay, so this is a yellow evening primrose. And yes, it has great big showy flowers, and definitely is going to attract in all kinds of pollinators. You can see too the structure of the plant there. All of the evening primroses have 4 petals. And then in the middle, they have a 4-parted stigma. It looks like a little starfish almost with a leg missing. That's the girl part of the plant. And then next to that, we have the stamens, and you can see right now they're all covered with pollen hanging down, and they're kind of in threads. So this plant has pollen, and then it has a receptive surface, and when pollinators take the pollen and put it either on this stigmatic surface here that looks like a starfish, or take it to another flower of the same type of plant, then that's how you will get seeds made. So the evening primrose, you can see if you look at the flowers, there are the new flowers that are about to open. There are the old flowers that already opened and are now drying up, and they'll make seed pods pretty soon. And then there are the big, full, beautiful, open, lemony yellow flowers here. And so the reason it's called an evening primrose is because flowers will open in the afternoon and stay open all night long, and then usually close up when the bright sun comes. And each flower will usually last a day. We're lucky to have this plant open a flower right now because the light is low, so it thinks it's afternoon early. So it's opening up. Usually larger moths, bats, etc. coming to pollinate the night blooming plants.
Wow, I would have never known all that walking by this little flower.
I think when we think of flowers, we think mostly, so far we've been looking at plants that are herbaceous, which means that they have green leafy growth, but they don't make wood, whereas shrubs are woody plants, and so the branches get hard, they get woody at the base, and they're usually shorter than, say, a tree. This is called Apache Plume, and this is a native plant, just ripe with history and interesting uses in the area. But today, since we're looking at flowers, we're going to look at the flowers. They are in the rose family. It kind of looks like a little single old-fashioned rose, or a wild rose if you look at it. And so, like everything in that family, they have 5 petals. And then roses are characterized by many, many, many stamens and pistils in the morning. They have many, many of those little yellow things. So they'll always have a whole lot of parts in the middle. And if you look at your cultivated roses and get down to the center, you'll find that too.
What's a cultivated rose?
A cultivated rose would be like a big tea rose when you go to a rose garden and you see those great big wonderful flowering roses. Those are cultivated, and so they've usually been bred to have more and more and more petals, and to sometimes not have as much of an open center, so that you get a big bouquet flower. But these in their own way are just the same. You could make a miniature bouquet out of these. So these are the rose flowers. And then here's the buds. So you think of a little rosebud, and there's a little, you can see it has a little pink color to it that hasn't opened yet. And then after the flower blooms, then it's going to make its seeds. And so the seeds on this plant are very interesting because they are shiny. They catch the rays of light if water falls on them, like it's doing now. It's catching the light in the dewdrops, but they're covered with hair. And so when the sun shines through these, that's also another thing that's beautiful on the plant that isn't a flower. These are actually the seeds. And so these long plumed hairs, they're like feathers. Those will be the attachments on the seeds that help them travel. And the seeds themselves probably aren't developed yet. But if we split apart the flower, we can see that each one of these is beginning to develop tiny seeds at the base. So there you have 2 little green seeds. They're a little pointed, that might help them lodge someplace and grow, and then the tails of the seeds will help them fly or attach to animals and travel. And so they're not just beautiful, but they're utilitarian. They know how to spread. Well, we chased the scent over to this beautiful fern bush here. And so we have a shrub, a woody plant. Once again, we can see that the branches are getting quite brown and woody, and the base very, very large woody. And this is definitely a flowering shrub. So once we have a plant here also in the rose family, and it has many, many small flowers on it. Once again, 5 petals. And once again, you can see many, many, many little stamens and pistils, the male and female pollen-bearing surface, and the receptive surface inside the roses. So you can begin to see that these too look like little roses, but you just have to get in closer at them and look to see that. This plant is an amazing plant. Walking here, we're attracted by its scent. And as we came over here, it was just like we're bees. We want to go to these flowers. We want to visit them. So this is a really good pollinator plant. Bees and all kinds of smaller insects will come to these plants and spread the flower pollen. So this is a plant that really supports life. Beautiful. And then it also has another kind of fragrance, and that's the fragrance in these leaves, which are a little sticky and also smell really good. So when you come to visit a flower like this on a sunny day, you can stop and observe, and you'll see everything from tiny, tiny ants to big wasps to butterflies. Everyone will be landing on this plant, pollinating it. And then you have the fragrance of the flowers, and you have even the fragrance of the leaves.
Now, Jan, the leaves on this kind of look like a little fern.
Yeah, they do. And the name of this plant is Fern Bush.
Ah, that makes sense.
And then the scientific name is Camibatiaria, which is a great big word. And then, but the second part is millefolium, and any plant that has millefolium in the name will usually have 1,000 leaves, it says, but many, many, many tiny leaflets, and these have these divided leaves coming off. So millefolium means many, thousands of leaves.
Wow.
1,000 parted leaves anyway.
Now, later on in our craft, we're going to talk about like drying flowers and making artwork with flowers. That looks like it may be a nice leaf to do a drying flower little collage with it, doesn't it?
It would. It's just really pretty, and in its own, it could even be. You could even use it in a picture if you wanted to do a picture using flower parts. You could use that as a little fern.
So we are in the Michael Moore garden here on the research side of the museum, and Jan is going to talk to us about some beautiful flowers that are here.
Right, so right now we're standing in front of two penstemons, or beard tongues as they call them, and these flowers are related to each other. But if you look at the plants, even though they both have red tubular flowers, one of them is tall with large leaves, and one of them is short with many, many, many small stems. But the flowers are very similar. But when you look at them, the first thing is that we see that these are very different than some of the flowers we've been looking at. They have tubular flowers. They have a top and a bottom lip where that's like an open mouth. And these are red flowers, and what you see is that red flowers in particular are, I'm sure many of you know this, attractive to hummingbirds. And so you can be around this plant and have a circus of buzzing hummingbirds, all fighting almost competitively for who gets to get the flower, put their bill in, hover there, and get the nectar out. Red ones, there are purple ones. The red ones are once again more attractive to hummingbirds. The purples and the blues can be more attractive to both bees and butterflies. Next to this, I just want to point out this little prairie evening primrose here. And this is an evening primrose like the yellow one that we saw. You can see the flowers are similar. They've got 4 petals. They've got the same parts in the middle. But this has very gray leaves. And this one is very attractive, once again, to night pollinators. Very, very drought tolerant. You can see it hugs the ground. It doesn't use a lot of water. Whereas the other evening primrose, we saw the yellow shoots up. It's big. It likes it wetter. So we're standing in front of some coral bells. And you can see these pink flowers,
look like a little bell.
Once again, look like a little bell. And these are also attractive to hummingbirds. And then behind it is our local desert columbine, and this one grows in limestone locally, and you can see it here. If you go to some of the limestone parts of town and look around, you'll find that this plant always grows in limestone, frequently out of the rocks. And as a columbine, it has a whole lot of gorgeous structures to attract birds to come pollinate it, particularly hummingbirds. It has these spurs and has plentiful nectar to draw in the pollinators. So this is a pretty little desert columbine, and it grows up here in places like Kachina, Mountain Air, East Flagstaff, and it grows out of the limestone rocks. Sometimes you can't even tell there's any soil there. It just grows right into the rocks.
Wow.
And what we can see here are 2 plants together. The yellow one is like the sunflowers we've seen. It's called Leaf Coneflower. And you can see, once again, a lot of little flowers in the middle, the disc flowers, and then petals around. So when the cone sticks out in the middle of a daisy kind of flower, that makes it a coneflower. This is one of the best butterfly plants I have ever seen in my life. When the sun is out and this flower is in bloom, you will never see it without a butterfly on it. It's a great thing. If you want to watch butterflies, just find this plant and stand next to it. And then here in the garden, as you would find in the wild, you have this wild oregano or bee balm with the little many tubular two-lipped purple flowers. And this is attractive to bees, as the name implies. It's a great plant for bees, and butterflies also love to visit this plant. And then we'll just end with fragrance as part of beauty. So one of the things about this plant is, along with having beautiful flowers, it has wonderful fragrance. It's in the mint family, and so it's very fragrant. And its other name is wild oregano because it has a very spicy flavor and is used as a seasoning agent, and very, very fragrant too. And so some of these plants, you can get the flowers and dry them. You can bring them in a bouquet. And if you bring them home, you can even press them and dry them, or hang them up in bunches in your house and have the fragrance of that wild oregano permeating your house. So many aspects of our beautiful flower.
So we have been outside and learned lots of things about flowers and our surroundings here on the research side of the museum. Now Jan has invited us to come in her lab and look at the lab and look at what botanists do. Come on in. Botany, we're in the right place. Hi, Jan.
Welcome to the Botany Lab workroom. This is where we bring in both plant samples and seeds and process them. And so today we're going to be looking at, we're going to collect a wild plant specimen outside and bring it back in and show how we prepare it for ultimate inclusion in our herbarium, which is a place where we store dried plant samples. So I'll show you a couple of these right now. So these are two finished specimens of plants that we collect. We can have them in our reference collection in the McDougall Herbarium at the museum. And here's a copy. You can see the stamp here. And that stamp goes on all of our herbarium specimens. And they are numbered. They are cataloged electronically. And then they are filed in giant cabinets. The place it's put in is called an herbarium. An herbarium is basically a collection of dried plant samples for reference. So everything is very carefully kept climate controlled, cool, and dry. And you have to be very careful not to bring in any insects or anything who might eat your plant specimens. And everything is put in these great big, tall metal cabinets. It's all organized. So it's just like having a giant filing cabinet filled with plant specimens.
Do you know like how animals can go through an extinction? Can plants do that?
Yes, plants can definitely go through an extinction, and there are, I think, in our collections, some plants that you probably can't find anymore. But if you do have a specimen, sometimes someone will find out that as they go out and look around, it's a big world, and sometimes they can discover that plant again. So having a record of it is good. You can actually sometimes find that, oh, this plant's not extinct. And if you have a reference collection, you'll know about that. The other thing sometimes you'll find is that over time, someone decides that you go through the collections and you check them out, and maybe they're not all correct because scientists make mistakes too. And so having that reference collection, you can always verify information. Plants, which is really important.
Wow. All of this we are finding out today because we wanted to learn about a flower. Isn't that great?
Go ahead. So I just looked around the lab here and I found a really good field notebook that you could make of your own as you go out and collect flowers and learn about plants, and then you can have your own reference collection of things that you've collected. And so this is just a simple spiral bound notebook. This actually belongs to our botany curator, Kirsten Phillips, and so this is her field collections. And you can see that she goes out and gets samples of the plant. She identifies them and writes their names. So this has a name tarragon, which is a wild version of the tarragon we use as spices. It has a scientific name, Artemisia dracunculus, and you may or may not want to have that in your thing, but you can get that information. And then she simply takes small samples and puts them on here with clear shipping tape. And this is just such a wonderful way to gather your plants. And you can see there's all different ones. This is one we saw today. This is the showy goldeneye we saw earlier. Here's a penstemon. We saw that one in the Michael Moore garden with the red flowers that attract hummingbirds. And so you can see you can get quite a collection of all the different plants in your garden or on your vacation. Of course, you have to be really careful taking pieces of plants. And what I'm going to do today is digging a plant for the herbarium, and you really don't want to be out there pulling up entire plants. If you have permission, you can take pieces of a plant. So if it's in your neighborhood, your yard, you know the people, you can also take small pieces of plants when you're on the national forest because it's called personal use. So if you're out there and there's a big plant, you could take a piece of it and put it in your notebook. You don't have to have a permit. And if you're on Bureau of Land Management land, you're actually allowed to collect plant material too. But if you can't collect plants, or if you don't know it's okay, the best thing these days is, of course, your phone or a camera can take a really great picture, and you can keep a picture book too.
Oh, good idea.
And you do get to see parts of the flower seeds, flowers, stems, all kinds of things.
Some leaves.
Yeah, here's a
And I bet
little
there's some
woods
grass.
rose with a little rose beginning, a rosebud on it. So, yeah, you can put all kinds of things in there. And you can go back to your specimen too. Like, let's say you're out and it's in bloom. You could collect a flower. You come back in a month, it's in seed. You could collect it in seed. You could collect the leaves. So if you don't have all the parts at once, if you want to have more information over time, you can get that all and add it to the specimen.
Oh, so your book could be like in stages of the flowering process and growing process.
And this is a portable plant press here.
Wow, let's go.
Well, we've just walked out here into our pioneer prairie part of the museum here, and we have this wonderful plant here. It's called a buckwheat. And if you've had buckwheat pancakes or heard about those before, this is a close relative. And like the buckwheat in your buckwheat pancakes, this plant has some pretty nice sized seeds on them, and those are harvested. And native people ate them. We can also eat them if we wanted to. Even though we know this plant is edible, it's always important that you don't eat wild plants or any plant unless you know from a grown-up who knows what they're doing that it's safe. This is a great plant for a specimen for an herbarium. So we're going to collect a little smaller specimen right now, but when we collect the plants, we have the flowers, we have the seed, we have the leaves, and then the other thing that we want that you probably won't want on your home specimens is going to be the roots. And that can be very important because I know that this seed is a biennial, which means the first year you have a little bunch of leaves at the base, and then the second year it makes flowers. But sometimes you don't know that, and so this root system I got is pretty big. Oh, here it is. Here's the first year plant. I got two plants, so that's even better because I can have what a first year plant looks like, and I can have what the second year plant looks like. And you can see these have pretty big root systems. Most plants that are annual have teeny root systems and pull out easily, and that can often be a characteristic that can help a botanist figure out which plant it is. So we get roots too because those are important for a good collection, so that people can see, oh yes, this is the plant, it has the right kind of root system. Or if they want to know about the plant, they can learn and say, oh, that plant has good deep roots. It will be really drought tolerant, and it goes way down. And so you can learn a lot about plants from their characteristics. I do want to make sure that all of the plant pieces are secure. Now in here, we have some newspaper. So we're going to put the plant in newspaper. And we're going to fold it so that it fits, it doesn't get broken. And then we're going to close up the newspaper. We're going to put a blotter on top of it to help absorb the moisture. And in fact, here's another blotter. And then we're going to put our cardboard on top. We're going to kind of even it out now that it's all stuck together. We're going to close up our plant press to keep things from slipping around.
Nice and tight in there.
Nice and tight in there. We're going to close this up. We're going to do that. And then in a normal day, you might go out and do 20 or 50 plants, or you might just have one like we have today that you want to bring in. And so it can go in the herbarium.
Okay.
And so now what we're going to want to do is take our plant out of our little plant pack here. That's our field pack. And we're going to want to put it into a plant press. And so plant presses are something you too can learn to make at home. There are all kinds of easy to make instructions on the internet. So we're going to open it up. And so this is very similar to what we've got in here in terms of you've got a cover, you've got some cardboard, you've got blotters, and we're just going to take our newspaper right here and move that part into the plant press. So the first thing we're going to do is write the name of the plant on here if we know it. And in this case, we write the scientific name, which is Eriogonum, which is a buckwheat, and Elatum, which means the seeds have wings on them. And we're going to call it, we'll also write winged buckwheat. And then we're going to write today's date, which is today's date. And then usually you'll keep a field notebook and write where you found it too. ECC, which is Easton Collection Center, MNA. And then in our notebook, we'd have more information. But that means when someone gets in here later on, because it might not be me, they'll have all the information about where it was collected. So then we're going to put on top of that the blotter, the cardboard, the rest of the plant press. We're going to put our straps on here. We're going to cinch that on down. And this begins to flatten your specimen, and over time you can sometimes cinch it down more. And then we're going to carry this over, and we've got two special places where we can put this. So the first place that we have is a drying cabinet that's specially made for plants. And we're going to open this up and put these in. This cabinet has a fan. And we will turn on the fan. We'll leave these here for a while.
So you went dry, cool, and dark.
We want it dry, cool, and dark. And so the fans will take the moisture out of your plant specimen, and that will keep it from molding, because you don't want to have mold. After your plant specimen is dry, we put your specimen in the freezer. And in here, you can see there's all kinds of plant specimens already being processed. If there are any insects in the plant specimen, it will kill them, because the last thing you want is to open your package and see something's eaten your specimen. And the absolute other thing you don't want is to take this into the protected herbarium, where you definitely need to exclude insects. So between the drying and the freezing, we will have a plant specimen that doesn't mold and that doesn't have insects or insect eggs in it. We have a special scope here. It's called a dissecting scope, and it's a very, very high power scope that helps you zoom in nice and close on your plant specimens and see what kind of hairs they have on them, all kinds of wonderful things that you can't see with the naked eye. And all those characteristics can go into identifying a plant. At home, though, you can certainly use a magnifying glass or a magnifying lens, or if you have a really good camera on your phone or a good camera, you can zoom in on your plant and take a picture, and then you can magnify that, just make it look bigger, and you can zoom in on a lot of details that way too. So even without this piece of expensive equipment that we have in a lab, you can do some of the same things at home.
So, thank you so much today, Jan. You have taught us, I think, a lot. I've had such a great time, and we want to thank you for joining us and showing us how we can be scientists at home, too. So, thank you.
Well, thanks for having me, Mary, and thanks for taking the time to do this. I hope that if you're interested in what you've seen today, just that you will go out, walk around, look at flowers, and see where you go from there. But it's a whole wonderful world that awaits.
I'm going to totally look at flowers differently now. Thank you. Now that we've learned something from a botanist, we've learned things from Jan, we're going to try and go out and about, and we're going to pick some leaves. I have this little beautiful little purple flower, and then I liked this little flower and this stem because it kind of already looks dried. And look at all the colors together. Maybe you would like to get your flowers all pressed because you like the color or you like the shape. So we have brought all of our pretty little specimens, all of the things that we want to press today. I've brought it into the kitchen. And you're probably going to need a little bit of adult help because we're going to be using a microwave, and we're going to be using a paper towel and a heavy glass container, something that can go in a microwave. Get your little specimens, and you are going to put them kind of just like what Jan was doing. She kind of had her little paper towel and her newspaper and all of those things. So our paper towel is going to act like all of those things. And you see how I just kind of put them all on one side, and then the other side I just folded over. So our little things that we're trying to dry out and press are in there. This goes on top. Now all microwaves are different. They heat differently. Some are more powerful than others. So what you want to do is you want to put your specimen paper towel in your microwave, okay? Then, because remember when Jan had her her pressing tool, how the boards and the cardboard and everything was kind of pressing it, and it was kind of heavy, and you needed some weight in there to press those specimens down. That's kind of what we're going to be doing here with this little glass dish, something safe that can go into the microwave. And we're going to put this right on top of our little paper towel and our specimens. So it's something heavy that's pressing it down. And we're going to close the microwave. Now, as I was saying, all microwaves are different. So we're going to start our little microwaving process, our drying process, for a minute and see what happens. This is a quick version of how to kind of dry some flowers. If you want to do it in a slower process, again, you just go out and collect the things that you're interested in, the colors or the shapes, whatever you want. You go out and get them, and you can put them in a really heavy book and put some other books, close it, put some other books on top of it, and you can leave it there until all that moisture comes out of your specimen. Like the great big cabinet that's in the botany lab. That's what we're trying to do here. Oh, there's our beep. Let's check. Now be careful because things are going to be hot, right? It just kind of came out of like an oven, a high intensity oven. So that glass could be hot. Ooh, can you see how that microwave drawed the moisture out of our little plants? Okay, let's take a peek. I think they're doing pretty good, but I think they need, that leaf still looks, and the flowers still look a little moist. Okay, we want them a little bit more drier than that. So remember, we don't want mold. You know, we got to get that moisture, because you don't want that mold growing in your book. So we said that we would try 30 more seconds at a time. Okay, so there we go. So when you get your little book, and you can get package tape, you know, like when you're mailing a great big box at the shipping store, they have this really sticky, nice, clear tape that will hold your specimens in place and keep them protected, but you still get to view them. And then remember, you can, oh, there's our timer again. You can find out the names of your plants and document that. Okay. I don't see as much moisture this time. I'm touching it. Ooh, that looks pretty good. I wonder, maybe we'll try 30 more seconds. I don't want to cook our little plants, but I do want them really dried out. So we'll try another 30 seconds. It'll go really quick. I think that looks really good. You see how stiff they are? It's hard to see on the camera, but it feels really dry. Okay, like it's been baked. Oh, look, even some of that plant came off. So maybe we could still put that in our specimen. Look how our beautiful little purple and yellow flower turned out. There's lots of things that you can do with pressed flowers. You can get that same kind of shipping tape. Make sure your specimens are dry. Put them on top of the tape. Put another piece on top of that tape, and you can make a bookmark. So guys, that's the end of our program today. I hope that you had lots of fun. I hope that you learned some things while you were having fun. And like Jan challenged us to do, is to go out and look for flowers and look at flowers differently. You have a whole new broad understanding about flowers. You can become a scientist, and you can create your own scientific book, or you can go out and create crafts from beautiful flowers, or you know what? You can just go out and enjoy them. Bye.